Welcome back to the Ultra Catalyst podcast. You know me, Stephen Nosek. Welcome to today's episode. We're going to be talking to a special guest today, Misty Gilbert. Now, we're going to hear from Misty. She's going to tell us a little bit about her background, her story, what she's currently working on. But we're going to dig into different areas throughout her life that you're going to relate to some of those situations. And you're going to be able to find different tips and techniques, maybe even strategies that could help you overcome wherever you're at, dissatisfied within your own life. Remember, here on the Ultra Catalyst podcast, we're just getting to know people just like you and me out there that are rising above where they were yesterday, right? Because the moment a change happens right this very second. And once you decide to make a change, your life could get better in an instant. Now, believe me, and this is not a disclaimer, it does take time. Sometimes it can be painful, but there is freedom when you decide to make that choice to live a better life. So today, please put your hands together and welcome Misty Gilbert. Hi, Misty. How are you today?
I'm good, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing great. I know we connected a few weeks back. I've listened to your TED Talk. I've watched some news articles. I'm going to say really quick, I know you're an entrepreneur, you're a transformational coach, a writer, and you're also a professional speaker. So I've heard you out there.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about you so we can kind of get to know you.
Yeah. Well, I'm currently 46 years old, single, never been married, no kids. I began dating for the first time in my life at age 37. So I'm actually just coming out of my first long-term relationship of 2.5 years. It ended in March. I was born and raised in California, and I moved to Texas September 97. So this September will be 27 years that I've been here. I was born and raised into a religion that my mom was born and raised into. My dad married into it. I refer to it as a cult because that's what it was. We didn't have a name, but we were a flavor of every religion out there. So a lot like, say, Jehovah's Witnesses, where they don't celebrate Christmas, and they pass out tracts to people trying to convert them to believe in God and be saved. Or we were like the Baptists, where we didn't drink, smoke, or dance. We were like the Pentecostal, where we wore long denim skirts with our hair in a bun. We were like the Mennonite and the Amish and the Mormons, where they have a tight community and a lot of their own doctrines and beliefs. And in that tight community, you kind of have like extended family, where you help each other build houses and put on weddings, and you sew the dresses and make the cake. And so everything's done at cost. So it's a really elaborate wedding for, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 max. And so that was my environment. And I left that when I was age 37. So my journey, though, began leaving California at age 20, moving from California to Texas when I left my parents' home environment to go out on my own. In the religion, basically, women are not supposed to leave the parents' household unless they get married. They don't, okay. The idea is to be a stay-at-home mom. So you don't really learn a skill, you don't really get a job. So me leaving at age 20 to move across the country wasn't accepted by my parents, and they let me know that I would not be welcome back because I was leaving without their blessing. Part of that is because 3.5 years prior, I was raped at age 17, and they did not believe that I was raped. They believed I was messing around with a man 28 years older than me. So I was 17, he was 45. And so in all that, they were very strict and had a lot of punishment for me and things I had to do to prove myself of being repentant and various things. And they gave me a 7-year sentence. So that played into the part of me leaving at age 20, because I was only 3.5 years into that 7-year sentence. And so since I hadn't fulfilled that original quote unquote agreement, if you will, not that I agreed to it, but it was their stipulation of me, it played into them releasing me from the home. So making a choice, though, to do that was simply based on the fact that I believed there was a better life for me. And I didn't believe that I had to stay in that miserable environment anymore. I wanted to experience love, joy, peace, harmony, forgiveness. And those things were not there. And so that desire spurred me to make that decision to leave.
A quick question now, when you were in that environment, did you have like normal access to technology or schools, or were you kind of like homeschool? Like, did you see like different families or associations within that community, or was it more, how do you say, sheltered, where like they restricted different books or television or let's say early 90s television or movies or anything like that?
A combination. So I went to public school through elementary school and junior high. So first grade through eighth grade, I didn't go to kindergarten.
Gotcha.
In ninth grade, I did what was called independent study
Yep.
course, which was through the public school, but able to be done at home. So I went once a week, usually on Thursdays. I did my test. I met with my teacher
Yep.
and, got my stuff. And so I did that for until I scholastically was in my sophomore year. I just had my 15th birthday. And I took in California, they have the California High School Proficiency Exam, which is
Yep.
equivalent to a GED. It's just you're in
Mhm.
your second semester of your sophomore year, or you're 16 years old. That program is designed for single mothers that have sons that need to support the mother, or girls that were pregnant. But because I had been really sick, that's how I qualified to be able to get into that program and then take the California High School Proficiency Exam, which I passed with flying colors. And they didn't see any need for me to continue my education because I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. So in that sense, I kind of had a hybrid. It really wasn't homeschool, but it was through the public school still. So my parents weren't teaching me. But as far as the rest of the things, I didn't hang out with anybody at school. I wasn't allowed to make friends. I didn't go over to my neighbor's house. We didn't have a TV. We didn't go to the movies. So there are some things were really sheltered, but we had a microwave. We had things like that.
Yeah.
We weren't like, we drove an automobile. It wasn't like didn't have those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But compared to culture for the day and age we were in, no, we were sheltered. We didn't listen to the news. Mom might catch the news right on the hour and listen to the weather, but she always turned it off before it got into commentary,
Yeah.
So we were not allowed to read the newspaper. My parents read the newspaper, things like that.
Okay.
Any books that we did read, it had to have been something my parents had already read, or they would proofread or read themselves before they let us read it. So a lot of control, and if there were things they disagreed with in books, they'd take a black marker and cover out the parts so we couldn't read it. Like we
Oh,
were
wow.
controlled.
Yeah. Yeah. That definitely sounds highly restrictive, right? Especially
Yeah.
for freedoms and stuff like that, right?
It was, and I'll be honest, my move to Texas was shocking in some ways because I now had nobody telling me to get up at 6:30 in the morning, or to be in bed at 9 o'clock and lights out at 9:15. I could stay up as late as I wanted. I could eat whenever I wanted. Breakfast was between 8 and 9, lunch was between 12 and 1, and dinner was 6 or 6:15, right on the minute as soon as my dad got home from work. We
Oh,
had no
wow.
snacking between. You could have water, but no food outside
Yeah.
of those meals. And so when now I'm on my own, like in a 6-month time, I gained like 35 pounds because like I could drink cranberry juice when I wanted. I could have Oreos whenever I wanted. I mean,
Yeah.
like anything I wanted to do, I could do. So life kind of got a little out of control at the beginning till I learned what I really wanted for my life.
Well, I could understand, right? You're going to say like you were kind of you had these boundaries, right? Some of them artificial, some of them very strict based on parental and the community, right? And then you go to Texas, those things are gone, and like you're like limitless to a degree, right? Based on what you could afford or who you could connect with. So I could imagine that all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, candy store,
Yeah,
total freedom. Let's just
total
go
freedom.
smorgasbord, right? Like,
Yeah. And I lived next door to a minister. So I was in the same religion when I moved from California to Texas. I didn't leave that until I was 37. But the freedom to be able to stay up as late as I wanted, or, read whatever books I wanted. Like literally, I had complete option. I still didn't have a TV. I didn't get a TV till 2015. But so a lot of those things were still the same. Didn't watch movies, but when I was in my car by myself, I listened to music I wanted to listen to, even if they didn't approve of it, right? So there were things that I did that gave me a sense of freedom. So initially, a lot of people are like, well, why did you wait till you're 37? Well, you got to understand, leaving the home at 20, I had a lot of freedom. Like I really
yeah.
felt I was free. And it wasn't until later that I realized I still was in bondage.
Yeah. Well, I could also imagine, right? Like going from a very controlled environment to something less controlled, because you're still within the religion, if you will. Um, you still got to fend for yourself, right? You still got to go out and make money. You got to still get used to your surroundings. You got to build a smaller community and then learn how to befriend the people around you, right? I could imagine that um, you being able to meet people outside of that religion may have been tough, right? Like you'd be interacting with them on a regular basis, but trying to get to know them or understand if they had any kind of agenda or not, right? I mean, that you'd probably have, how do you say, some walls kind of put up,
Yes.
I'd imagine, right?
Yes. Yeah, there was a lot of walls, and just learning to be able to converse with people and not be afraid of people. Because literally I had no world outside of my family or the religion. Yes, I went to public school, but I lived in such fear of creating any relationships because of the control, right?
Mhm.
Mom would show up at school, check on you, make sure you weren't, making out with a boy or all kinds of stuff. Like that's how she did. So I never risked that. I didn't want to get in
Yeah,
trouble.
yeah, yeah, because you have the quote unquote penalty of how do you say, shame, maybe, right? Or some sort of confrontation that you probably didn't even need anyways. It was probably unnecessary because they were a little more overbearing on their productivity, probably in the name of religion, right?
Yeah, they were definitely believers in, discipline, punishment, um, whether or not you were repentant or not. Like there was just always a portion of suffering that you had to have, the due diligence for having made a wrong choice. There was a lot of fear instilled in us on multiple levels, that were we doing God's will for our lives. So I already struggled with that. I didn't need to add more
Yeah,
to it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward. You're now in Texas. Let's say 10, 15 years have gone by. Uh, you decided to start doing some writing as well as become an entrepreneur. Do you kind of
Yes.
want to dive into that? What was one of your first business ventures that you just said, hey, let's try something new, or let's start talking about either the experience or branching into a new area where you discovered more freedom?
Yeah, so I had worked when I moved to Texas, my first job was in an OB-GYN clinic. And then eventually I transferred and worked at a collections medical billing company that did pharmacy claims for third-party processing. And
Mhm.
from there went into home health and did data entry and medical billing, and then pediatrics. And it was at the pediatric place that an opportunity came up through the field engineers that operated the database that we used. They would come in and do updates to the server or things. That's back in the days when everything was DOS based before it was Windows based that it is now.
Yeah.
But yeah, they knew of a physician that was looking for some help for somebody to do some medical billing on the side, and that's currently what I did. And so they got the idea, what if we started a business and you could manage it and run it and we could have a team? And so we started going and making plans for that. And then they got notice from their employer that that would be a conflict of interest for them to actually work for the software company but own a medical billing agency,
Mhm.
and they would be terminated if they proceeded with it. And so I decided, well, I'll do it without you guys.
Yeah.
so so
Damn
so I
straight.
launched into setting up a business. That was June 2004. At the time, my business name was Medical Account Solutions. And I worked it evening and weekends for a year until I got too much volume. I couldn't keep up with my day job and lifestyle and things, and it was becoming too much, and made the move to go full time.
Yeah.
And so started full time, and then that went for about 2 years. And there was a 90-day window where I lost two clients back to back, which were my two bigger clients. And it really devastated me, Steve. Like it just was, I wasn't sure I was cut out to be an entrepreneur. It was
Mhm.
already challenging enough to market yourself and do all the work and all that kind of thing. And so I wasn't sure. And so I took a temp job for a while to bring in more revenue as I tried to figure out what I wanted, and then landed an opportunity through that to be a practice administrator of an ophthalmic plastic surgeon's office. And so went back to being an employee and just worked my clients evenings and weekends because it was small.
Yeah.
and did that for 2 more years. And then when I again was starting to explode, decided I would hire employees instead of take that risk again to go 100% as an entrepreneur. So 2008, I hired employees. And then in 2010, I lost my job. And I just decided at that point, I'm done with working for someone else. I will figure out how to make this work. I'm 6 years in, like I can do this. And so that's literally how it started. I didn't look to be an entrepreneur, it kind of just fell into my lap. But once I became one, I wouldn't say you have time, money, freedom like they tell you, but I could control my life and I could, figure out how to make it work for me. And I liked working from home. And so there was a lot of things I started doing. But in 2010, I started networking and getting my business out there more. And then 2013, I formed an LLC and rebranded under the Resource Management Group. And of course, along the way, I've added more services. So I started in just doing medical billing, and then I started doing HR stuff and some consulting and massive forensic work, a cleanup. And so then I started educating entrepreneurs and doing some workshops and business consulting. And the end of 2016, I dropped the medical billing just because of where things are with insurance, the Affordable Care Act. And I was spending a lot of money and time trying to recoup things. And I was very good at it, but it was very stressful. And
there's a long tail on recouping, especially from an insurance company.
Yeah. And I was paid a percentage of collection. So obviously very driven and motivated, because there's no way for me to, that's not what that industry set up when you're not an employee, you get paid a percentage of collection. So, learning the industry, fighting the insurance companies. And I think if I had started possibly working with coaches and mentors sooner than I started doing that in 2014, I might have not done that shift in 2016, but at that point in time, I was burnt out and exhausted. And there were months my business made $40,000 a month. But the stress to get there was exorbitant. I had 5 employees at that point in time, and I spent more time managing my team than doing the things I loved. So I kind of had a shift where I was just like, I would rather train people how to do this, and I'd rather help businesses really maximize their bottom line profit and loss and make sure they're compliant with state and federal regulations than to spend time chasing insurance.
Yeah, it sounds like you were working in your business versus on your business, right? We hear that a lot, especially in entrepreneur circles, right? Where you're doing the day-to-day, more of the tactical operation stuff, or teaching or guiding of people, opposed to getting out there, driving the strategy, driving the revenue and the sales. And so I could see how that could burn you out after a while, especially with how long you were in the industry, not to mention you started before like social media really started to pick up, right? With like ad spend and stuff like that, especially in the early 2000s, right? There was
you did a lot of door-to-door sales knocking and networking meetings and
yellow pages, right?
The time that it's crazy. I mean, I don't feel old, but to look back at my life and even think I started in the DOS-based era, right? Like, so I mean, ultimately I was in the industry 10 years before I got my own business. So now I have 29 years experience and have been in business for myself for 19 years. And so I still have the Resource Management Group. I currently have 2 employees, but I spend more time doing business consulting and training, and then more of the financial aspect, everything but filing a tax return.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, awesome. That's quite a journey. What would you say to any entrepreneur now that's looking to get in business? What would you say are the 2 things they should really consider going in? Because as you said, it might not be all the glamour and hype that a lot of people see in social media, right? There's a lot more work behind the scenes that people don't really realize that's there. What would you tell them?
Well, I have a document that says the 10 most things most entrepreneurs make mistakes at. But if you were to narrow it down the top 2, the first one I would say is understand that you've got to design your business around the life that you want. Don't design or design your life around your business, not your business around your life. So in other words, create the life that you want, figure out how many hours you're going to work, figure out when you're going to take phone calls, figure out, are you going to work weekends? Are you going to work evenings and take some time off in the day? Really design your business as you want it to be. And from the ground up, I went all in on my business 24/7, basically, as much as possible. I just worked and worked and worked and ran myself into the ground. I didn't take any vacations for 7 years. So those are things I don't encourage people to do now, and I don't teach people to do now. I say, even if you can't afford a full vacation, do a stay-at-home vacation, or at least take a weekend off a quarter. Like, yes, at the beginning, you're going to spend a lot of time, energy, and money building your business and getting it working. Very few small entrepreneurs that are bootstrapping it can do it any other way. They don't have the resources. But make sure you design your life and then add the business to it. Don't design your life around your business and let your business consume everything. There's got to be a balance. And then the second thing is, you go into business because you have a passion and a purpose and something that you are really excited about, serving other people and providing a product or whatever it is. Make sure that you are focused on what your core values are and that you live them and breathe them and be them 100%. Whether that's with your team, whether it's with your clients. Like, if you want your clients to pay you timely, you pay your vendors timely, because it's a reciprocal exchange of value. So it's things like that they don't pay attention to. And most of them get so hung up in trying to make sales that the back end support of admin work just slides, and they get behind on taxes, and they get behind in those things. I usually get called in between year 2 and 5, because they are not thinking they need any input on the front end. I'd love to deal with them. Like this year, I have a goal to help 100 people set up their business. And so if they go through my course, they can get all the tools that they need and understand how to develop their business and when to bring on employees and when you need an employee manual and what all needs to be documented in a processes and procedures.
Systems and processes.
Systems in place. Most of them don't set up good systems. And so the foundation, basically, I would say is, again, design your life the way you want it, and your business will fit in there. And then the second thing is just structure, financially have structure. So many people go all in and they spend all this money on computers and equipment that they don't need yet. Really, like, budget what you need and buy what you need. And some people feel it's a scarcity mindset, but truly start small and build with the extra profits as you have them. And that way you won't ever feel like you're sacrificing yourself and you're not getting a reward for all your work.
Yeah, because as they're generating revenue, right, some months are going to be good, some you might not make a lot, right? Or you don't realize you have a lot more expenses going out this month, right? And you're upside down, right? And I've seen that. I've talked to a lot of people on the podcast, and then several friends that have struggled with that early on in the business. I know as an entrepreneur starting many years ago, I did the same thing. I was upside down within month number 3, and it hurt. It was painful. Unfortunately, that business only lasted 7 months, just the amount of stress and just not being able to, right the ship soon enough. It just tears you down, especially.
Well, and the statistics, Steve, are, SCORE has them in the first year, 80% of businesses do not make it. And in the first 5 years, it's 95. It's very high. And a lot of times they just don't really have the foresight to be able to plan. And a lot of it is just simply planning, figuring out, having a business plan is great, but too many people put emphasis on it for, 5 years and 10 years. And I tell people, I want to see a 1-year business plan that's really solid. And I want you to really focus on the next 30 days. And then I want you to focus on the next 90 days. Like, get there. Like, if you go too far, it's defeating. You need to take a small step forward so that you can build on that. And just like your personal life, your business has to run on a budget. And if you don't have a cushion, if you can't have your basics bills that you can make them, you're going to fold.
That's good advice. I use that also for ultra running and training for triathlons as well, right? I have a future goal of where I want to get to, but my plans are very short term, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks out. And then it's just about executing the plan on that day, right? Some days it's going to suck ass. You're not going to want to get up. You're not going to do shit. Pardon my language.
You're good.
You're going to go out there, you're going to give it your all, and then you're going to look at your times and you're going to go, that was terrible. But you know what? The reality is success is just those small incremental steps over time that are done consistent, right? You're going to have a back and forth, right?
My favorite book's The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, and that's his
Okay.
philosophy is simple
Yeah.
disciplines done consistently over time produce results. And it's not, a lot of people want to get here and they see the social media stories of, making this much money. And like I tell people, it's not about how much you make. It's really about how much you keep, because when you sell a business, your business isn't sold that you can make $7.5 million. Your business is sold on what's left and what are the assets. That's where it's sold. So great that they made $7.5 billion, but how much was left? And so again, processing more volume in or out is not going to make you happy. You've got to be loving the life you live and living the life you love.
Yeah, I think you made a great point earlier about structuring your life and then adding the business into it, right? Because if you're not controlling your freedoms, and what I like to do personally is time block my time with family or friends or my programs. Everything else fits into those other blocks of time, right? It's not really a, how do you say, a balancing act, right? Because that's typically like a triple beam scale, right? It's got to even out. Um, it's all one life, right? There's just areas where you're going to put a little bit of effort here, a little more here. Some days it's going to be a ton over here and very little here, and then the next day it may reverse, right? And you just got to keep adjusting where you put your focus and your energy, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you have that vision and goal of, hey, out there in the distance, I want to get X, Y, and Z, or accomplish or reach this level of sales or profit, net profit, or whatever it is, right? So
Right. Right. Yeah. So I think the idea is more entrepreneurs as they begin business, if they can have a business advisor or a mentor, somebody in their back pocket to be able to be that guy, because it's hard when you literally are trying to just make a sale so you can have bread on the table, right? Like it's not easy. But I tell people all the time, being an entrepreneur isn't easy. It's hard, but you don't have to make it difficult. Those are two different things.
Yeah, so I'm one person for the longest time, I tend to overcomplicate stuff, right? And I over engineer this plan that only needs to be 2 steps, right? But somehow it took me like a week and a half to just land on 1 step, right? And that's usually the hardest thing for a lot of entrepreneurs or even anyone trying to take action, right? They get so overwhelmed with what the future looks like that they forget that the only way to move forward is right this second, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've had that. I've struggled with that many times. In some areas of my life, it's still there. In others, it's foot on the gas the entire time. Let's just go, right?
Mm-hmm.
A little
Mm-hmm.
bit of thought, okay, tweak the plan, go. But it's funny that we bring up these different resistance in different areas, right? Starting a business versus working as an employee or entrepreneur in a company. Sometimes it's very interesting of how we shortchange where we need to put our efforts that don't align with what our dreams are or what our visions tell us where we should be going, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I'm all for obviously being an entrepreneur. I now have a second and a third business. So clearly I love being an entrepreneur. But I think some of it too is understanding how you were designed even as a child. Like my life was very structured. So for me to create structure was not hard. It was harder for me to listen to my heart and to create a vision of where I wanted to go than the daily routines. I could do that in my sleep. So there is a balance. You've got to have both, but you can't stay so much as an entrepreneur that's a visionary that you can't execute.
Yep, yep. My childhood was a little different. Over the years, it was more. I'm more of that enjoy chaos, bring it to order, right? And so I could dream all I want. I could do all these things. Sometimes trying to turn it into to eliminate is the most difficult part, right? It's just trying to get, how do you say, give it some wings and get it to take off on the ground.
And I think that's with most things in life. You get to a point where something pulled the red carpet out from underneath you or slipped on a banana peel, whatever your story is, right? Got a door shut in your face, and the grief, the trauma, the challenge, the shock devastates a lot of people where they can't pick themselves up from their bootstraps and figure out, what do I want to do next? And it's challenging. I mean, I've had significant challenges the last year in my life in several ways, from a massive car wreck January the 5th of this year that totaled my Corvette, but it actually saved my life. coming out of my first ever long-term relationship of 2.5 years. I still love him. But you have to decide, like, okay, this has happened. Am I going to let it define me? Am I going to let it ruin my life? It's going to permeate everything. It's going to be there. It's going to affect things. But you get to decide from here forward, how you want to live and what you want for your life. And you can let everybody else be in control of that, or you can be in control of it yourself. And I would say, it'd be interesting if you were to have a panel of people and ask them a question for them, what was the turning point? For me, it's just been a mere fact of sitting down and making a decision and then going for it. And I don't look back. Yeah. So beginning with my parents, I made a decision, I'm gonna leave the house. And in 2 weeks I did. I went to California, I got my things and I moved. When I decided with the church, something's off, like this doesn't feel right. I was like, I'm going to take a month off and just figure things out. I never went back. Yeah. That was my decision. It propelled me forward and I just never went back. And so I think a lot of times in life we overthink and strategize. Well, what if I make the wrong decision? What if this doesn't work out? Well, if it doesn't, you're going to pivot again.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Right. I like to think that we are all of those events and traumas and stuff that will always be part of us. Right. That makes you unique in this moment going forward. Right. I look back when I had the turning point to say, you know what, today I'm done drinking. Tomorrow I'm 100% sober. I'm not going to look back. If anybody questions it, F them. I don't care who they are. It doesn't matter to them. This is, I'm not where I want to be. This isn't the life I've envisioned. The only way to move is to go forward, period. That doesn't define me of who I am anymore. That's just a piece I was, or it was part of my life many, many years ago, almost 5 years and 9 days, actually. Proud moment. But you know what? Never looked back, and if I did, and probably just like you might think this too, when I look back, I look at where I'm at, consider to where I was, and I constantly am at a higher plateau. And I keep climbing the mountain going forward because there isn't going back to that peak, right? I could never visit that area, could never go back. A, because time won't let you, but B, you're always growing, you're always achieving, you're always doing something more to push you forward, unless you enjoy being stuck and stagnant. I mean, we all know there's some people like that, right? They're the same people they were 10 years ago as they are today. But I don't know. That's just not how a lot of us are cut. I don't think you're cut that way. I'm not cut that way, right? I'm always looking, how am I going to make this life better? Because it's the only one I have.
It is. And I've had to learn the strategy is really to be the most present today, because, again, even though I didn't expect to have a car wreck, it's something that wakes you up, even if you are living intentionally, because you can go, I could have easily not been here. Am I doing exactly what I want to be doing with my life? Staying stuck is because we either have too much regret from the past that we can't let go of, or we're trying to avoid anxiety for the future, or wishing we were there sooner. And either way, you are here today. You can't go backwards, you can't go forwards, but you have today, and make the most of the day. And if you do that every day, you're going to have an amazing life. But if you are always pining that you have to be somewhere further along than you are to be able to enjoy life, you're never really enjoying it. And when you get there, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah. I've experienced that in different areas at different times. And what I've recently found is that when I wake up, I just go, you know what? I made it another day. I have some breath in me. I'm going to try to attack whatever it is in front of me. I don't know if I'm going to feel up to it. I don't care. I just got to go out and do it. Because usually when you start taking action and you move forward, just like if you go out to the gym or exercise, walk, run, whatever, you tend to feel better afterwards, right?
Yes.
And then you realize, like, God, that shit wasn't that hard after all. I put so much energy in avoiding it or preventing myself from taking the steps forward that was the most difficult thing. It actually wasn't doing what I had to do to get it done, right?
Yeah.
Those are some realizations that I see all the time now, right? Because I mean, I got a lot of things that I'm still tearing down, right? There's still little blinders. Maybe all of us have them. Maybe we don't. Maybe it's just me. I'm not fucking crazy. That there's just little areas that I'm like, okay, you know what? If I just chip away at this just a little bit longer, I'm going to have that big of a hole that I could actually see what's on the other side. And then it's just, I'm going to be drawn to it to move faster, right? With more efficiency, more speed. Obviously, a lot of that comes with experience. And then I think one thing that you said earlier that really resonates is bringing someone else in that could help guide or mentor or coach you that has lived it, breathed it, gone through it, experienced it, et cetera, because I think those things are not just an opportunity for you, but also them to relearn it as well, right? That's kind of the best thing about teaching or mentoring, right? Is you get to learn things twice.
Yeah.
The time you effed it up to get there, and then now you get to share your mistakes and all the successes with someone else that they could potentially prevent them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes what you went through worth it, like it makes,
Yeah.
because you're seeing the benefit it is to somebody else. For sure. For sure. And I don't think you're the only one that has these things that you're still revisiting in the transformational coaching work that I do, or the business consulting work that I do, working with people who've had chaos in their life and turned it around into clarity. They may be able to get so far, but for every level that you get to, there's another level to grow through. And it can be the same lesson that you're learning on a deeper level. Mm-hmm. So, I tell people, changing your thoughts will change your life, but that's not the only thing that has to change. You have to change how you feel. So like I never tell people I am a rape victim, because I don't look at myself as one. I look at it was an instance in my life that happened. I was raped, period, end of story. Yeah. But that experience has affected dating. It has affected romantic relationships. It has affected how you view men. And there's ways I've had to learn to face those fears, face that trauma, face the way that impacts my life. So will I be doing that the rest of my life? I think so, because I don't really think you can experience some of these hard things that affect you so deeply to the core that you just up and heal. Like I believe I believe it's layers, and through the process of life, you get more confidence, you get more courage, you come more relaxed about what happened, you put it into perspective, you don't hold on to the past, and you don't live in fear of the future, and you're able to go like, this is my situation, and you lay your cards out vulnerably for people because you're not afraid of who you are, and you'll work on you, whatever shows up.
Yeah, and every time you do show up, it's all of you, right? All the imperfections, all the perfections, everything. You can only mask so much, right? Right. Until you realize that I accept it all. It is who I am, right?
I have a term where I say it's flossom. Me and my flaws are awesome.
Flossom. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I like that, Misty. That's great. Awesome. Hey, let's move into the transformational coach. So are you doing that on like consulting for businesses, or are you looking at different professionals or personal people that are looking to transform their life? What's kind of the angle that you really specialize with transformational coaching?
It was built out of my own story. So leaving the cult and me sharing my story on social media, my business was born in 2016 by people wanting to work with me. And me deciding, I actually have a skill set, and I'm not going to just give my time away. Like there needs to be compensation for this. So in some ways, the business coach I'm working with right now feels my two businesses could be combined, because the skills I use in one, I use in the other, and can combine them as one, but I've structured it as two separate. So the transformational coaching is more on an individual level, because your inner world creates your outer world. And so all the struggles that entrepreneurs face in business start from their inner world. And so if they don't fix that, they'll never fix their outer world. And that they go around trying to fix their outer world thinking that's going to solve their problems, and they're still miserable. So I focus on the individual and helping them move through their fear, shame, guilt, and regret, because I find those are the four pillars most people struggle with once they've had certain experiences in life.
And so you work with your clients to kind of identify, assess, and then break down, address, and then help them with different strategies of how they could move forward and essentially pivot. I think you used that word beautifully earlier today, right? You pivot into a quote unquote new identity in those different aspects of how they could now control their lives and push whatever it is that they're working towards forward without any hesitation, right?
Right. And many times you were talking about blind spots earlier. It's really blind spots that they're not able to see in their life. And they usually come to me at a point with a catastrophe, right? It's either an impending divorce or a situation with a child, that's in prison or something, and they're struggling with these decisions their child made, or it can be just communication, relationship challenges. It can be struggling in a job, not feeling like you're valued. And that you're living a life of purpose. And those are all surface things because there's really roots underneath that they haven't been addressing. And a lot of them don't even really know who they are. What are their core values? What do they really stand for? What do they believe? What do they really want for their life? And many times you start in a space of, if you don't even know what you want, we start with, what do you not want? Because if you're clear on what you don't want, then you know what you do want, because then you just mirror that, right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
So many times people get, I don't even know. I don't have any dreams, or they have the scarcity mindset that their dreams are not possible. So then we look at, how can we look at this with a different perspective? What lens can we look at it and say, what else might be possible? And, if I were to role play with you and put your story in my shoes and my story in your shoes, what would you tell me if I was telling you this? And sometimes when you get that out of body experience, you're suddenly able to see it with a different perspective easily. It's not hard.
Yeah, definitely, because you're sitting across from yourself at a higher place, right? If you're looking three-dimensionally, right? And you're viewing down at like I don't know, actors and actresses on a stage, right? And you're able to
Yes.
kind of go through the motions and say, you know what? Those little things, why are they even bothering me, right? Those are so insignificant to everything that I do in my life, right? That's fantastic work. Have you had some great successes with some of your clients where they've
Yeah.
been able to go on and push their business to the next level, or save that marriage that was impending, divorce, etc.?
Yes, I have. And it's very an emotional experience to know you touch somebody's life. And a lot of times they've been through counselor after counselor after counselor. And so they're like, well, I'll try this coaching thing. And, maybe they've either heard one of my talks in person, or they watched my TED talk online, or they followed my blog or whatever. It depends, but I can't tell you how many times I've been told, like, you're the first person who's really helped me see something that I wasn't able to see about myself. And a lot of times it's something that they've blocked out of their memory from their childhood. I don't spend a lot of time sitting in your childhood, because I don't feel that's helpful to keep reiterating all of that over and over. But we do go back and look at what are some turning points of some pillars and decisions that you made, and maybe where you chose to shut down your heart, or maybe you made a decision to people please your parents, or, like for me, the church, right? Or other things, friends, or you self-sacrificed something thinking it was going to get ahead, and now you're resentful, you're bitter, because you made sacrifices in a relationship that didn't get you where you wanted. And instead of now pivoting and going, okay, that didn't work out, and I made those choices, I'll own them. Now what do I want to do with them? And turn your lemons into lemonade, like you said earlier. They stay stuck thinking their hands are tied behind their back.
Yeah, it's life and the emotions that we anchor to different events in our life. It's just amazing, right? Because there's some things that it could be a pivotal point that you doesn't affect you, right? But in someone else's life, if they were to hear that, they'd be like, "Oh crap, this is like a larger magnitude than I know what to deal with." I know many years ago, I had a trauma as a kid, and put it away, addressed it. 20, 30 years later, it came back, right? For whatever reason, like somehow mentally I could like zero in on the situation, right? And one of the things that I did was I just recorded a video and I put it out on social media, right? Why not air something that with such gravity in your own life to the point where you're just like, boom, that's relief, right? Because not only do you get over that particular trauma, but just the fear of sharing it publicly where it becomes evergreen on the internet or social media, that's just mind blowing. Because like once you could actually get over the fact that you're doing it, it's like, wow, I could get rid of anything that I'm holding on to as an anchor, right? I just got to go to the bottom, wherever dark and depth that is internally, and just start cutting away those cables, right? And just freeing up whatever's holding me back and such. And that's just one of the things that I've done personally is, hey, if you could go on a Facebook Live, Instagram Live, and just share a story, 5 minutes later, you're just like, wow, that is so much relief. And then
Mm-hmm.
boom,
Mm-hmm.
those little things that might have been holding you back years ago, they're gone, right?
A lot of it, I think, in my experience for myself first, and then people I work with, is we fight accepting whatever the experience was.
Yeah.
And we think we can just move on without accepting it. And it doesn't really work like that, Stephen. Like, you've got to be able to accept the situation and turn, as I say, your pain into power. Like, that painful experience has made you who you are. So if you
Mm-hmm.
can't accept it, you're actually not accepting even who you are right now. And you're not able to grow to who you can become because you're still fighting who you were. And so
Yeah.
it's like this inner war. And it's not just your thoughts, it's your feelings, particularly when I deal with
Yep.
people who've had traumas like I've had in my life. It's not just changing your thoughts. I have to change how I feel. And
Yeah.
so it's not like you're just going to manipulate and try to change. It's not like that, but it's like, you've got to explore, if I'm thinking this, but I still don't feel it, where's the disconnect? Where am I not in alignment to my head and my heart and who I am? And so it is challenging work. You get to work through a lot of, you know, experiences and beliefs and habits and routines that people have set. And a lot of times hard stuff they're not willing to talk about. And so, giving them that safe space to be seen and heard and understood, and to let them know that no matter what their challenge is that's going on in their heart and mind, we can work with it if they want to do the work. I can't do it
Yeah.
for them.
Well, it's very hard to do work for someone else, especially when it comes to internal, right?
Right.
Right. There's a lot of heavy lifting that you can only provide so much guidance, role playing, third party assessment, little tips that you still got to go out and do the work, right? I mean,
Right. And
I like to say, do hard shit, right?
most people
That's
will
one of
get to
them.
a point, they'll do a portion and then they retract again, because like then
Yeah.
it's too scary and they feel too vulnerable. So again, understanding that all of us have faced and created adaptive coping methods for our
Yep.
experiences. And are we
All
willing
part.
to, as you say, cut those ties and create new ones? Or are we going to stay energetically charged to that previous experience?
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey,
Yeah.
let's move to one more topic. Um, You're also a writer too, and you got some projects coming up. Do you kind of want to share with our audience what you're working on, kind of maybe just a little under the covers of what you're working on? You don't have to go too deep and
Sure.
release all the information if you don't want, but I know people are dying to hear what you're working on and that you're going to be coming out with very soon.
Yeah, I started my personal blog in 2007. It was called the life of misty.blogspot.com, owned by Google.
Hmm.
And then in 2016, I bought the domain of my name, Misty W. Gilbert, and moved my blog over there. So I've done a lot of writing online for free, for fun, for sharing my heart, sharing my journey. Many times out of inspiration, I've done posts, I've written a lot of poems. So right now I'm taking my poems off of social media, getting them to put in a book. I have 7 books I want to write. I have 3 I'm in the middle of. But the first one will be my story, putting it in a more written format that goes deeper than what's in my TED Talk.
Hmm.
But I enjoy writing. Part of it has been a way to express the experiences that I wasn't able to share, and my perspectives. A lot of people, when they talk with me, they're like, you're just fascinating to talk to. I don't have people in my circle like this, that think like this, that challenge themselves like you challenge yourself, or that are as intentional as you are. I'm very intentional how I live my life and
Hmm.
do different projects. Like this year, I'm doing one called Sharing Each Other's Lives, where I put out on social media, are you someone who would like to receive some love and encouragement through snail mail? And
That's cool.
it was general. I didn't say what I was going to do because I wanted to draw the people who would take action on that. And so every month this year, I'm sending them something. It can be a card one month. I have a movie going out next month. In 4 months, I'm sending them a book, The Slight Edge, that I'm very passionate about. I read or listen to that every year because it's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Um, But so to me, being a ripple effect into people's life is giving them an ability to relate to your story, but yet have inspirational points from it that they can apply to their life, even if they've not been abused or been raised in a cult or have never been married and have no kids. All my story, right? They have their own, but they can relate to the struggle and they want to know how to move forward and be courageous. How do you find courage? And so I write about those things, about creating the transformation and that how we do that. And so that's what I got going. And eventually my goal is to turn my book into a movie or a TV series. So there's a lot of good stuff coming ahead, a lot of work still ahead to do it, but I have, it's been a dream of mine and I'm doing more steps to make it happen.
Excellent. Well, I have the utmost confidence you're going to conquer it, anything in front of you. And if you ever need anyone to come in and read the book before it goes to print, let me know. I'd be glad to read it and provide feedback. And yeah, that would be awesome.
I would love that. I will put you on a list of people that said that, because you always, when you do a book launch, it's always great to have people that want to be a part of that process. So
yeah, most definitely. Definitely. Well, fantastic. It's been a pleasure chatting with you today. Before we go, can you tell people where they could find you so we could get them to connect with you and learn more about you? Maybe they're interested in some of the services that you provide, or even you got other tips and tricks that you want to provide to them that they could take and start making a change in their life today.
Yeah, so the two things I would lead them to think about is a question I always ask my coaching clients when I work with them is, what would you do today if you weren't afraid? And so I'd ask them to, meditate on that, journal around it, pray about it, write it on your mirror, reflect on it for a while. What would you do today if you weren't afraid? The second question I would ask them to consider is, what would it look like if you would show the world the real you? Like if you were remove your mask, and that was my term long before the pandemic when we had a mask over our mouth, like the mask is everything about yourself, not just your face, but who you are, how you live. What would it be like if you were really real to people around you? But they can, whatever their favorite platform is to connect with, they can find me on every one of them under Misty W. Gilbert. I am most active and engaging on Facebook, but I also post to Instagram and LinkedIn. I don't post much to TikTok or Snapchat. I am on them. Maybe eventually I'll have some short little audio or video clips eventually, but I haven't gotten into that part yet. So for now, they can find me on those platforms. And my goal is to encourage, support, and inspire you to live the life you want and live it intentionally in freedom.
That is, I really can't close other than that. I mean, you put definitely the mission of what we do here at Ultra Catalyst, but it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today, get to know you, get to learn about all the different struggles you've went to, but also what you're doing today, how you've turned the corner, you're helping people. You dropped, I don't know, I lost count of how many nuggets you shared with people that they could pick up and run with right away. But for all of our audience listeners, please reach out to Misty. I know she's waiting to hear from you. You got all of her contact information. It will be down below in the podcast notes. I just want to thank you once again, Misty, and everybody else for joining us tonight on the Ultra Catalyst podcast. Check back next week. We may have another guest, or it will be yours truly just rapping from the microphone by himself. But until next time, thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate the time with you.
100%.